It is unconscionable to expect the Israeli government or any government to sit idly by as deadly rockets rain down on its cities.
Israel's precision strikes are a defensive last resort necessary to protect her people.
For the U.S. Congress, Israel is the David and Hamas the Goliath.
While Israel seeks to live in peace alongside a Palestinian state, Hamas seeks to kill or expel every Jew from the Middle East.
Last week, members of Congress placed blame for the conflict squarely on Hamas.
America stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel in its ongoing struggle for security and peace.
Shoulder to shoulder, in part because of the Israel lobby. And if he is to bring peace to the Mideast, Barack Obama will have to contend with it. Lobbies drive American democracy. Many lobbyists have offices here on Washington's K Street, and from here they try to persuade policymakers to adopt a point of view on a given issue, such as arms sales or farm subsidies or even gay marriage. Now, the biggest lobby group dealing with international relations defends the interests of one of the world's smallest countries.
The pro-Israel interest group is the most powerful among foreign interests that wants contact with the federal government. It is the most traveled foreign destination for members of Congress.
A group called the American Israel Education Foundation paid for 149 of those trips since 2005 at a cost of $1.5 million. It is the sister organization of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC. Founded in 1953, it boasts 100,000 members across the U.S. It has spent $13 million lobbying Congress in the last decade, but tens of millions of dollars more are raised by individuals who sympathize with AIPAC's agenda.
Israel is seen as perhaps the most reliable ally the United States has.
But this former American ambassador says money has not bought the American people's affinity for Israel, that AIPAC only gives shape and structure to a 60-year-old friendship.
If that weren't the case, and it didn't resonate with those both values and interests that Americans see, then all the lobbying in the world wouldn't have the kind of influence that it does.
However, Washington lobbyist watchdogs view AIPAC as one of the most powerful and influential pressure groups in the country.
Members of Congress go out of their way to show their agreement with Israel and aren't as critical as they might be of some of the ideas.
The perception in Congress.
M.J. Rosenberg is a former staffer of AIPAC, now a critic.
The AIPAC membership is a highly motivated group that will make a congressman's life miserable if they stray from the AIPAC line.
How do they do that?
Well, just calling, writing, threatening to no longer contribute to their campaigns.
Almost every U.S. politician running for or holding high office makes a stop and a pledge at AIPAC's annual conference.
And I will bring to the White House an unshakable commitment to Israel's security.
And should a leading politician run afoul of AIPAC, even a former U.S. president, watch out.
Jimmy Carter has become a pariah within the Democratic Party.
At least that's what it looked like to many when former President Carter, author of a book accusing Israel of apartheid, attended the Democratic Party convention last year.
He was out there for 3 minutes and hustled off. And that's because he has dared to criticize American policy vis-a-vis Israel and the Palestinian conflict.
AIPAC helps boost U.S. foreign and military aid to Israel, $3 billion annually. And it persuades Congress to take other actions AIPAC members believe will help Israel. Al Jazeera has learned of one such action. It's a resolution proposed last summer which endorsed what some see as a blockade on Iran, a country viewed by Israel as a threat to its existence.
It can be interpreted, and probably would be interpreted by many international legal organizations as an act of war.
Hilary Mann Leverett is a former AIPAC intern and an American diplomat who conducted secret talks with Iran.
Of course, the Israelis interpreted a similar attempt to blockade Israel's, a naval blockade on Israel by Egypt's President Nasser back in 1967. Israel legitimately took that as an act of war, and it was one of the precipitating factors for the 1967 war.
Some 286 U.S. lawmakers had already agreed to co-sponsor the resolution when Coletta of the Common Cause Watchdog Group took the resolution to former high-ranking military officials.
they clearly came to a very quick agreement that they felt that sections of the resolutions were problematic and could be interpreted to mean a military blockade.
AIPAC, however, told Al Jazeera in an email that their analysis was an out-and-out lie. Congress makes foreign policy with and often under the leadership of the President of the United States. It's too early to know where Barack Obama stands, but some have been encouraged by statements he has made on the war on Gaza.
The loss of civilian life in Gaza and in Israel is a source of deep concern to me. And after January 20th, I'm going to have plenty to say.
And this former staffer of AIPAC, who now favors a less hawkish Israel policy, says Obama's own story and vision could be stronger than any lobby.
He talked about the suffering of the people of Gaza and of Israel, which of course is appropriate, because it's mostly been the Gazans who have been killed by the hundreds. It was very different from every statement I saw from Congress.
But finding a new way won't be easy for Barack Obama. Not just because violence has returned to the region, but because the old ways of doing business in Washington make Israel's voice much easier to hear than that of the Palestinians. Nick Spicer, Al Jazeera, Washington.